have the ability to do anything with code. I don't know, working with Azure, working with AWS, printing statements out like an output, reading input, anything at all. It's going to come from a library or a module. So let's go ahead and go to File here, and we're going to go to Settings. Now, under Settings, I'm going to have my project interpreter here. And you see all these different lines: Azure, Azure Application Insights, Azure Batch, PyYAML. Let's see, we scroll down here. We can see Boto Core. We can see Boto 3, that's for AWS. All of these are all libraries, are all modules. So I'm going to scroll up, and what I want to show is, for example, Azure Management Key Vault. So let's go ahead and do this, and let's say from Azure Management Key Vault import star. So what this means is we now have all of the different commands available in our script to interact with Key Vault for Python. So how do we actually find out what commands, what functions, what methods, what functionality we actually have in Azure Management Key Vault? Well, for me, and this is kind of the way that I recommend it really for everybody, is to actually look at the SDK. And this could be a little cumbersome at first. It still is cumbersome for me, don't get me wrong, it's still even difficult, but it's the best way and it's the best approach. So I'm going to open up Edge here, and I'm just going to Google Azure Management Key Vault Python. Okay, so we're going to see this PyPy here, and what PyPy is essentially a home for libraries and SDKs and modules. If you've ever heard of like the PowerShell gallery, for example, or NuGet, it's very similar essentially. So this is the library here, but if we want to get to the actual code, we can click on the project link here. Another thing that I do want to point out is, like, you can see the different maintainers and stuff. So for example, Microsoft themselves are a maintainer of this project. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to home page here, and now we're at the GitHub page because this is all open source, mind you. We are at the home page for Azure SDK for Python. So let's go ahead and click on the SDK itself. Now, if I scroll down here, you're going to see a bunch of different resources, things for compute, things for, we have the Key Vault here, Kubernetes, log analytics, everything. Let's go ahead and let's click on Key Vault. So from here, we can actually see the Azure Management Key Vault, the same exact library that we have imported here. So the good news is that, of course, because we're importing it, like, really what you're doing when you're importing this library or any library, for example, you're literally just importing this directory. You're importing this folder with all of the different features available. That's literally what you're doing. You're importing a directory at the end of the day. So we're in this directory here, and if we click on Azure, we can see management, and then we can go to Key Vault, and from here we can see all of the different configurations. So here's the actual class here, and we're going to click on this, and if I go ahead and scroll down, we can see a whole bunch of different pieces of code here, but what we're really looking for is a way to interact with the Key Vault using Python. Now, 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to say it always, but 9 times out of 10, if you see something that ends with client, that means that that's a way to interact with or authenticate or authorize yourself to a specific SDK. So I'm going to go back here, for example, and I'm going to go to PyCharm, and I'm going to go dot. And as we can see, we can now actually start interacting with Key Vault. So we see that there's a few different methods here. We see that there's a vault here, and then we can see what actually exists in vaults, for example. Now, if we go back, we can scroll down here a little bit, and we can see that this is the only class that's available. However, there are methods in this class. So for example, if we scroll down and we see, well, we see models here, we see operations. So let's take operations for a second. This is a method inside of the Key Vault management class. So if we do this, operations. So boom, we can actually see this method here. And if we want to learn how to use that method, we can go back, we can take a look at the SDK, and then we can see all of the different things that are happening inside of the method. So for example, here are some notes here. The instance depends on the API versions. It'll let us know what API versions are necessary. There's some if statements here that say, okay, you got to have these API versions, else it's going to raise a not implemented error exception, and then you're going to get an error back there. So what I want to do is I want to go back and let's, for example, look at the newest 2019. Okay, and then we can go to Key Vault Management again. So we're essentially going to see the same thing in here. This is just in the 2019 directory. Let's go ahead and look at the configuration here. Now, if we scroll down, we can see another client configuration, Key Vault Client Management Configuration. So, for example, we can copy that, go back to PyCharm, highlight this, boom. So it's actually saying that it doesn't exist. So why do you think that is? Well, if we go back to the SDK, for example, we can see that it's a configuration for Key Vault Management Client, which means this is just a authentication method for the Key Vault Management Client. So we're going to go back here and let's take a look at one more. Let's look at the init.py. So init.py, it has a few different meanings. Originally, like before Python 3.3, let's say you had a directory and then you had another directory and you wanted to import code from one directory to another, or actually a Python script from one directory to another, and you didn't want to copy it, you just wanted to implement it into the other directory, you had to have an init.py at that root directory. Now, the next thing is that init.py is really good for code that you want to initialize right away. When any code runs and an init.py is in the directory, the init.py is going to kick off first. So as we can see here, this init.py is essentially saying from all of the Key Vault Management Client, import Key Vault Management Client, and then it's going to try to import the patch SDK. If it doesn't, you're going to get an import error saying pretty much, yep, we can't import this module or this SDK. Now, I know what you may be thinking at this point, Mike, we're not seeing this in action. You absolutely will see it in action in this series. However, to be able to see it in action, we need to kind of cover a few more basic concepts. And speaking of the concepts, in the next video, next week, we're going to be taking a look at variables. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoy the videos, like, comment, subscribe, tweet me, email me, let me know what you think, let me know how I'm doing, and let me know how I can help. Thank you so much.